Thank you, Dr. Bo, for joining in this conversation with AsiaBizToday here at SuperAI. So much of the AI conversation today is, revolves around productivity and automation. So from MetaComp's perspective, how do you see AI reshaping the underlying infrastructure of financial services, particularly in areas like payments, digital assets, compliance, and risk management, where MetaComp has a large share?
Indeed. So, Vish, thank you so much for having me, and it's a great pleasure to meet again here in this event. So, the penetration of AI becomes more prominent. More and more companies are using AI to improve efficiency and reducing costs. And at the same time, the power of AI can be also utilized to improve alternative ways of serving the clients and then making money and adding additional revenue to the companies. The way that we see this is a gradual revolution as well as a change of how the financial service industry deliver are going to be very different from before. As you know, we're a licensed digital assets as well as a traditional financial institutions in Singapore. But what you can see over the past 5 to 7 years is the payment with ever addition of a stablecoins into it are making a very interesting hybrid payments that are revolutionizing and changing how the cross-border payments are happening. This is one model sometimes people call sandwich model, which is you make fiat payments, local fiat payments in one country, you use a stablecoin for cross-border payments and the settlement, and then you turn to fiat in another country. So this makes the whole payment process more efficient, lower cost, higher efficient. But at the same time, you see on the wealth side, the increased number of RWA token, which is a real-world asset token, such as tokenized gold, tokenized money market fund, even gradually tokenized stock, that gets into the wealth investment side. Now, when you have a hybrid payment infrastructure with stablecoin and fiat, and then you have a hybrid wealth infrastructure with RWA token and traditional securities. The AI creates a hybrid decision-making and hybrid interactive mode. What do I mean by that? Old days, you go access your financial service by call your broker, then later by access the web portal, and then later by the API. But now, with the agent's capability to understand what you're really trying to achieve, you can interact with the agent provided by financial institutions. And then gradually, you may have your own agent, your Claude, your OpenAI, that may be armed with abilities to tap into financial services. And then for that, you get through the agent-to-agent financial services regime. And then AI's evolution, particularly with anthropic skills, that it makes this whole interaction between people and agent, far more efficient, like the new generation of API. So the hybrid payments, hybrid wealth, and the AI and the human hybrid decision-making and interacting with the skills are fundamentally changing the financial service industry as we know over the next 2 decades.
From an average investor or a layman's perspective, I mean, what you speak, and all that thing that's going around now sounds like, one of those Hollywood sci-fi movies, right? So where does this leave the average, common investor? I mean, obviously, people with a lot of technical knowledge or the wherewithal to have these, creating their own agents and all that is fine. But what happens to a normal investor, a normal average consumer? Because all these lot of jargons, right? One is the tokenization bit, and people are just trying to understand what tokenization is. In that sphere, we already have now AI and agentic AI and all these things. So, how do you see this whole thing kind of coming together?
It's actually surprisingly to make things easier than before. Assume that you are an ordinary investor as an individual or even as a corporate, that you have your treasury capital. You want to invest in different things. And then if you want to connect with certain banks or financial institutions, you have to go through your API connectivity process. You have to have your own team, understand what is this API jargon, very last generation. And then hook up, connect, testing, blah, 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 usually take a couple months. Now, forget about all those jargon come with AI or even this digital assets. The thing is, suddenly, as long as you have agent with OpenAI or Anthropic, there's something called a connector. On your agent, all you have to do is almost like the old movie of Matrix Reloaded. Remember the Matrix movie? You don't know how to do karate. You don't know financial service capability. You hook up your brains, and then suddenly you know. That's exactly what's happening now, is entities such as us are providing those very complicated capabilities. In a very simple way, you hook it up in your agent. Suddenly, you have access to certain bank accounts. You have access to stablecoin accounts. You have access to different types of wealth accounts. Whether it's a traditional format or tokenized format, doesn't matter. It's a more matter is, I want to access that. I want to buy this, generate this return, and then execute it for me. The whole journey, in my view, AI emergence is making that a whole stablecoin plus, tokenization journey for ordinary laymen even far simpler and far easier. Otherwise, you have to figure out a lot of technology. Oh, how do I do my wallets? How do I do my tokenization? How do I handle all this safety? How to handle all these matters? Now, you use your simple natural language on your agent and say, I want to do this. Why don't you execute for me? That's it.
So this convergence of AI and digital assets, I mean, where do you see maybe 5 years down the line? I mean, what kind of a scenario do you foresee?
I see the rising power of hybrid. The hybrid in three senses. Number one is the payment is not done purely by digital. It's not purely done by fiat. It's that hybrid combination. The wealth is not purely done by our traditional old broker-dealer way, but it will not be purely just by those Web3 guys. It is going to be a combination. Similarly, the access to service, the making decision will be done in a hybrid manner. So I believe there will be a lot of human and AI joint efforts. Remember, this is not trying to create a movie or entertainment piece. This is money. Yep. Those are the money you don't want to lose. We work very hard to make this money. You don't want your agent to just lose it too easily. So I see a proper governance for human and AI to work together, leverage the power of hybrid payments and hybrid wealth to make it easier for clients. So I think that is just getting started. It's going to be very exciting. But we may talk more about later is a big problem needs to be solved. It's all about governance, anti-money laundering, safety, security. A lot of big matters needs to be gradually addressed by the industry.
So you rightly touched on that subject of governance and security. In that respect, do you think that CBDCs are a solution? Do you see more and more countries coming up with that and that becoming more acceptable and tradable?
So CBDC versus a stablecoin is in that domain of payments. So far, CBDC has not been very successful for cross-border payments. And it's very natural because whenever you want to do cross-border payments, there are at least two countries involved. And then, should I use your CBDC or you should use my CBDC? It becomes much more interesting. And this is why there were those so-called bridge trying to create that to happen. However, stablecoin, as we know, particularly US dollar stablecoin, as we know, has been increasingly dominant in this cross-border settlement. In our view, the stablecoin denominated in US dollar are providing a complementary solution to SWIFT, making the cross-border settlement faster, more efficient. But it's actually making US dollar more dominant. And we are seeing increasing number of countries trying to do CBDC or their own fiat stablecoin that has not been very successful. Even European Union, the size of its stablecoin is very small compared to US dollar stablecoin. With that, we believe with increasingly complex geopolitics in the next decade, gold will probably play another significant role for payments. Long time ago, people use gold for exchanging value payments.
Yeah.
Now, there is gold token available. These are so-called tokenization efforts. Who are they? Texas, gold. Tether, gold. Tether bought 170 tons of gold, bigger than many countries in terms of their gold reserve. And then they issued billions of dollars of a gold token. So Texas gold, Tether gold, replacing some pieces of a US dollar stablecoin for cross-border payments makes sense. And we see that gradually happening. We're also spearheading that. But all of this, we can use AI to make it simpler, make it easier. So in terms of decision and interaction process. So I think all this is going to be quite different from the CBDC type of route. But if you ask me to bet my money on, I think I bet more money on the stablecoin created cross-border settlement layer. And then that stablecoin may start with the US dollar stablecoin, and most likely the next wave will have some gold token in that mix.
Right. So Asia has been home to a lot of advanced digital financial systems. So in this development that you're talking about, do you see unique opportunity for this region in terms of, being able to kind of leapfrog from where it has been in the past?
Right. I think particularly for exporting economy and then Asia go global economy. Within Asia, there's a lot of the digital payment, digital wealth infrastructure being built. And sometimes with the government's efforts, wonderfully done as well among, for example, ASEAN countries. But we're also exporting to Latin America. We're also exporting to Middle East Africa. And we're also exporting between or among the Asian countries. So what is the best way to create that type of settlement? That's where we think the hybrid payment mode of the local fiat within the country and the stable coins, whether or gold tokens across country, are going to be quite effective. So I think there will be spaces for all those routes.
So as financial services become more prevalent within these regulated environments, what are the kind of governance or safeguards you think that countries should put into place so that this is kind of seamless and a secure environment?
There are two elements about it. One is on how you best govern the digital assets to enter the payments and the wealth industry. Singapore's Payment Service Act in 2019, US's Genius Act in 2025, Hong Kong's Stablecoin Acts, all are leading toward those directions. That is happening, and then it is becoming more and more mature in many jurisdictions. Very good things to happen. This allowed more financial institutions and the high net worth individuals to be able to be more relying on regulated, compliant service provider like us to do this. Now, with more agent comes into the game, if you think about the traditional finance, I use a very simple 5 elements to describe it. 1, KYC. I allow you to onboard me for me to provide a financial service to you. 2, I need to do anti-money laundering, transaction monitoring. 3, I need to give you accounts, bank accounts or whatever credit card accounts. 4, payment. 5, wealth. If you look at all those 5 elements, if you get into the more agentic era, all those things need to be well taken care as well. But top on the list is which agent is allowed to provide a financial service, which agent is allowed to receive a financial service. In traditional financial industry, that's called a licensed financial institution, KYC. Similarly, in our view, end of the day, it will only be AI-powered licensed financial institutions will be able to provide agentic financial service to other people or other agents naturally. Now, another question is, which agent is allowed to receive financial service? Meaning what? Which agent should be able to make payments and wealth? There's a question mark. This is why we rolled out our KYA, Know Your Agent framework. Know Your Agent framework, we're following Singapore's IMDA's AI governance framework. Let's apply them into the financial services. We want to understand who owns this agent, who controls this agent. Do we have a proper KYC of that who? And then do you have enough governance and safeguarding rail between that person or legal entity and this agent? Only after you establish those parts, we as a financial institutions should feel more comfortable providing that service to your agent. So KYA is missing in the industry. We and also many of financial institutions were jointly trying to push for it. And then agentic transaction monitoring, which we already have products, agentic wallets, which means bank accounts, stablecoin wallets, card accounts, and agentic pay, doing swapping, payments, invoicing, agentic wealth, all this will come. So I think we are just getting that started as a whole industry to see agent to agent, who are who, how does that work, who can receive, who can provide, and then who is the monitor, who is policing it.
This is so scary, right? I mean, so given that agents are finally a set of codes, so do you think it's much easier to kind of, let's say, to maybe mimic an agent and create a clone of an agent? So let's say an agent who has approval to be a receiver or whatever. I mean, so how do you think that's going to work out?
In older days, when internet just gets started, how often was internet used for scamming? Even right now. When blockchain got started, how often they were used for scamming? Similarly, I expect to see tons of agentic scamming. Copy your agent, steal your money. So we have to stay ahead of the game. As responsible financial institutions, we need to stay ahead of that game. That is usually happening whenever there's new technology coming to the game. This is why we started working on that whole KYA, Know Your Agent framework in the earnest. If you don't pass that standard, you cannot sufficiently prove that you own and control that agent. You cannot sufficiently prove that you are the right person to be KYC'd. You cannot sufficiently prove every single step there's proper human monitoring, human control, and that human is the right human. We should not provide agentic finance. We have to do KYA properly. It's not just one step. It needs to be a continuous process. To answer exactly your question, what if your agent is being copy-pasted by other people? How do we manage that? There's a lot of technical matters into it. Where is this agent hosted? What is the controlling framework? Which SGSM you're using? Who is the manager? Prove that your people are still managing it. Continuously prove that your people are managing it. All the work are forming the foundation of the Know Your Agent framework that we wrote about a few months ago.
So how are regulators reacting to this? I mean, obviously, MAS has always been kind of ahead of the curve in many of these things. So are they already working? Because obviously, with all the regulated financial institutions in a place like Singapore, the regulator will have to it has to be a kind of a top-down approach in terms of having these KYAs.
This is, I think, the beauty of Singapore. Singapore, there's one core regulator for financial service, that's MAS, different from many other jurisdictions like US, China, Hong Kong, where for financial services, they have multiple regulators, making things much more difficult. This is why I firmly believe Singapore will, again, being at the frontier of responsibly and progressively regulate agentic finance. Think about on the stablecoin side. Singapore's law passed in 2019. How long did it take into US to pass theirs? 6 years. Singapore was ahead of US by 6 years. Singapore was ahead by Hong Kong by almost 6 years. That's amazing. Similarly, IMDA's AI governance, I think, is also world's first governance as issued or promoted by a country. And then now we continuously seek guidance from the regulators as well as IMDA. How should we develop this framework? I think this is another beautiful part of Singapore is it's top down and also bottom up. You need the practitioners to try it and then to see how it can potentially work, but the government is also working or supervising us. And at some point, rightfully so, where you have financial institutions develop, you have many, many more financial institutions to jointly establish a certain protocol or framework, and then that gets further vetted and evaluated by the regulators, and then they add their additional elements to supervise, and then gradually you form, hopefully, a country standard. And then that, once it's formed, we hope can become world's standard in many other countries to follow and to learn.
So as MetaComp, you witnessed a lot of technology cycles. So with this latest cycle around artificial intelligence, what really excites you, and how different do you think it is from the previous cycles?
The most exciting thing is a confluence of the few elements at the same time. It is once in probably a 20 or 30 year opportunity for financial institution people to see the change of payments with the stablecoin, the change of wealth with some of the tokenization, and then the change of interaction and decision making with AI. It's phenomenally happening. You don't see this often. In my career, this is probably the only time we're going to see so many confluence of key technologies that are making the whole financial service industry efficient and then change its whole format. The last time it made such a big change was more or less this internet era. But this that was almost 20 years ago. But this is the time that the whole industry is fundamentally changing. It's very exciting.
Right. So if we were to be probably sitting here in 2030 at SuperAI, what kind of transformative development in the financial services industry you think people are underestimating today?
I think the step-by-step agent-to-agent finance will happen. Hopefully by 2030, when we sit here, that the framework has been better established, responsible and licensed financial institutions like us have a steady agent to provide the service, and then there are sufficient safeguarding rail for the individuals and then clients, agents to receive the financial services. And then you also have different tools to manage it so that when we get to that stage, people don't have to spend that much time on financial service transactions. And then people can spend a more productive time on something else. I don't know how many people really enjoy managing all your different accounts and then making all the transactions and then continuing doing the onboarding, all the stuff, and then manage your wealth at some point. And at that time, when the whole agent-to-agent economy becomes more steady, more regulated, more well-protected, and hopefully people can enjoy their time away from doing finance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bo. I mean, that's almost like crystal ball gazing. And yes, it does sound a bit scary, but I think that's what we've faced over the last 30 years. I mean, you mentioned about internet, but during the .com era, I mean, one was very uncertain. And yeah, I mean, almost 30 years down the line, we see how it has changed our lives. So hopefully we'll see that with the agents coming into our lives as well.
Excellent. Thank you again for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.